Good day, and welcome to our conference call on how education is evolving to self-serving IT. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Later, there will be an opportunity for audio questions. You may enter the audio queue at any time by pressing star 1. Please note that this conference is being recorded. It's now my pleasure to turn the conference over to Mr. David Boehm. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mark. This is David Boehm with Champion Solutions Group, and welcome to all of you who are on this webcast on how education is evolving to self-service IT with virtual desktops. This will be a little bit different. This is not a PowerPoint presentation. This is a panel discussion. This is going to be led by Mr. Todd Yohey, who is the Superintendent of Oak Hills Local School District out of Ohio. Along with Todd, his fellow panelists will be Kevin Vogel, who's Vice President of Virtualization of Cloud Services at Champion Solutions Group, Debbie Brenner, who's Vice President of Professional Services, and Matt Huntingford, who is the Technical Account Manager for VMware, who helped work on Oak Hill School District's VDI solution. A couple of other things just as we get going here. First of all, if you want to ask questions during the panel discussion, you will see on the top of your screen a Q&A button that you can hit. You can then type your question in, and we will try to get these questions in as we weave them into the discussion. There will also be a question and answer period at the conclusion or towards the conclusion of this webcast, in which you'll be able to contact Mark, who is facilitating this for us, and he will bring you in to ask your questions at the end of this particular webcast. I do want to tell you that this is a part of a series of educational forums that Champion Solutions Group is hosting. For those of you around the country, just quickly, in Alabama, in the Huntsville area in May, there'll be a seminar on transforming data into meaningful information. And for those of you in Hartford, Connecticut, or Columbus, Ohio, or Tampa, Florida, or Charlotte, North Carolina, there is going to be a series of seminars there on building your cloud strategy and the introduction of Microsoft 365. With that, I'd like to get this webcast started today. I'd like to introduce Mr. Yohey from Oak Hill School Districts, and Todd, if you could, please give the audience a little personal background. Tell us about Oak Hill School District and some of the challenges you and your staff are facing the upcoming years, and how you're using technology and self-service IT to address those issues. So Todd, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, thank you, David, and certainly welcome to everybody who is tuned in this afternoon. This is my 23rd year in education, the past 7 as a school superintendent. Prior to that, I did serve as a building principal and a high school teacher. The Oak Hills Local School District is a suburban school district on the west side of Cincinnati, Ohio. We have an enrollment of approximately 8,100 students, 500 teachers, close to 400 support personnel. We have an annual budget of around $65 million, 9 school buildings, including 5 elementary buildings, 3 middle schools, and 1 large high school. Our high school has an enrollment right at 3,000 students. In fact, at one time we were the largest high school in the state of Ohio, and now we're in the top 5. Performance, we've been rated excellent by the Ohio Department of Education, or excellent with distinction the past 9 years. But having said all of that, we certainly are facing many of the same challenges that school districts across the country are facing with school funding issues, how to get the best bang out of our educational dollars, and we certainly are looking at technology and what we've done with VMware and virtual desktops as a solution to what we've done.
Okay, Todd, in an article that featured your school district in Education and Executive Magazine, the article focused on some of the creative, and I put quotes around that, solutions that you and your staff have brought about to Oak Hill School District. And people talk about creative solutions. How does the rubber meet the road at Oak Hills? Tell us a little bit about, how does it impact student learning and anything else you could tell us about using technology?
Sure. Well, we're very fortunate to have many forward-thinking people here in Oak Hills who make it their mission to find creative solutions to our challenges. In fact, we actually strive for innovative solutions versus traditional solutions, and as part of that, we provide a background to allow people to take some risks without the fear of failure. Over the past few years, we have engaged our community regarding 21st century learning, and during that engagement, we discovered that an overwhelming majority of our stakeholders supported a redesign in traditional instruction and learning. And so based on that, we have created a completely wireless format at our high school, and we've allowed and encouraged students to bring their own technology to the learning process. We will soon offer the same at our middle schools, and we've actually even started the discussion regarding elementary schools and the wireless climate. In addition, we've implemented our own online learning experiences, and beginning next school year, we will offer some limited hybrid courses. And over the past 2 to 3 years, we've actually developed a district-wide mantra here in Oak Hills that simply states that technology is a part of us, not apart from us.
So one of the questions I have here is from somebody from Virginia is, how do you see technology changing the way your school district will teach in the future? I think you started to touch on that, but if you could add to it, that would be great. And what do you mean by bringing your own computers or your own, how do you work that as far as students bringing their own endpoints, if you will, to school, and how do they access this?
Yeah, I think there's conversations taking place across the country in most school districts about how do we as a school district afford or provide a one-to-one computing environment for our students. I think everyone feels it's the direction that we need to go. It's the way that we're going to best meet the needs of students. And we struggled with those same questions. And when we engaged our community a few years ago, we found that they were right behind us. They felt that students using personal devices was something that we needed to seriously look at. So we started down the same road that a lot of school districts, I think, start, and that is, what machines do we buy? How are we going to afford it? How are we going to maintain it? What type of cost of ownership is involved, et cetera, and realized very quickly that in a school district our size, in a high school the size of ours, that the funding was really a roadblock. And so we really started kind of thinking differently about how we would approach this, and we came upon the solution that why should we go out and buy computers or some type of device for all of our students when many of them have their own device that they're using now, be it a smartphone, a laptop, an iPad, some other device that's out there. And so really we started looking at creating a wireless environment, an infrastructure that would support any device that a student would bring to school. And so we went down that road. We thought it made a lot of sense. And so now we actually, at our high school and very soon our middle schools, students are encouraged to bring their own devices. So we do not have a cell phone policy that prohibits cell phones and smartphones. Students bring all kinds of devices. Our infrastructure meets the needs, and teachers are using them daily in the instructional program. We then, of course, have a population of students that perhaps don't have that technology, or maybe parents do not want them to bring it to school, et cetera. And so now our cost in providing students is just to fill the gaps. So we do provide wireless laptops to students while they're at school if they do not have their own device.
So one of the questions I have from Chris is, do you believe that by letting students bring their own computer to school, do you believe that will save taxpayer money? I guess that's sort of where you're going, but if you could just answer that question, that would be great.
Well, it certainly saves in a lot of different areas, but primarily, if you remove a population of students that you do not have to buy a computer for, that in and of itself saves saves money because you're not purchasing those computers, nor are you providing technical support for them.
So are students then able to access this from home as well? I mean, they're able to sign on and access, the same type of experience from home as they can at school?
Sure, it's one of the beauties of the VMware. Now, at this point in time, we've only deployed the virtual desktop, the VDI, at Oak Hills High School, but we are looking at the middle schools, and as I said, starting the conversation with elementary. We've deployed a combination of about 1,400 thin client machines and high-end computers at the high school, and all of the supporting infrastructure to open up about 1,200 virtual desktop or VDI license. And we did then, just this past September, open up access from home, so students now can access through our Oak Hills Local School District.org portal, and they can now use that virtual desktop client to access all the software that's on the high school image. So it's really like they're sitting in high school, but they're at home or some other location. And again, we permit them and encourage them to bring their own devices, and it allows them to have access to that virtual desktop really anytime, anywhere.
Now, and I appreciate that. I'm going to bring a couple of the other panelists into play here, because we all have different abilities and capabilities here, and there's some technical questions that are being asked. I'm bringing Kevin in. Kevin, can you explain how this works? How are people able to do this? And keep it at a high level, okay?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Virtual desktop is a way of really removing the operating system from the physical device. In other words, whether you're running an iPad from Macintosh, whether you're running a netbook, whether you're running a full-blown PC, or like Todd had mentioned, thin clients, or nowadays there are even things called zero clients out there. And the whole thing with virtual desktops is really removing the image to be dependent on an individual device. So with virtual desktops, we actually have the images running in the data center. It does a couple things for Todd and his staff. It centralizes all the management of those images, all the application updates, all the virus protection, all the backups. Everything is done in the centralized data center, and the students are basically just viewing what's running back on a server back in the data center. So it gives the students the same look, feel, and experience of running Windows 7 on their desktop without Todd and his staff having to actually manage all of those individual devices.
And what's the advantage of that as far as using like iPads or Zoom or PDAs? What's the advantage to them as far as performance?
Well, it's portability. Number one is the big advantage. It doesn't matter. Todd has been smart enough to set up a wireless network where they don't have to be connected. These iPads now, a guy on the plane just yesterday was telling me he gets 10 hours of runtime off of his iPad. So that means a student could walk in the door, bring up his virtual desktop and at first period, walk from class to class to class, and always be connected, always have his desktop running, and the performance that he gets on his iPad, which isn't the highest forming processor or the most amount of memory, would be the same as if he was running it on a high-end PC somewhere in Todd's labs.
So going back to Todd, are your teachers utilizing this technology in their classroom, or is this just in the lab at this point?
We have teachers that are utilizing it, and it continues to grow, every week as people become more accustomed to it. It's really quite a change in tradition, and it's becoming more of a means of delivering some instruction and just knowing what's out there. Actually, by the end of first semester next school year, all of our high school and middle school teachers will have some companion sites that are accessible online that will supplement their classroom instruction.
So are you allowing remote learning? Are you going to allow students to actually join in class, but let's say they're homebound or because of an accident or sickness, or are you going to allow them to actually participate in class through this type of technology?
The answer to that is yes. We've actually done that this school year. We've had the capability to do that, and it hasn't been widespread, but as I said, it's becoming more popular.
Okay, we have a question from Mark. Can you open that up so I can see that?
Sure, I'm sorry.
Okay, so Mark, this is a technical question, so I'll probably go to Kevin, and then I have a couple questions for me after you. And that is, how much disk space, this is obviously, how much disk space is being allocated for each desktop, and what's the bandwidth being used to provide these desktops to the students? So, Matthew, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So with VMware, we have a specific technology called Composer that allows us to actually build our master images the way the administrators want to be able to build them out from a patching standpoint, from an application standpoint, and so on. And then from that image, we can build numerous link clones, or starts off 0-byte files that dynamically grows as users continue to use their systems. But every one of those unique systems have their own unique computer names, have their own unique identity on the network, but they all reference back from the master image. So they all read back through to the applications that are inside that master image. So from a disk requirement standpoint, that has a significant amount of savings from requirements, generally up to between 75 and 90% disk savings from a traditional needing, like for example, 20 gigabytes per image type of thing.
And this is Kevin, and there's also deduplication technology that's taken advantage. The product that they happen to use on the storage side was Neta, which has a unique ability of being able to deduplicate the information on your disk drive. So the two things, the Composer part and the NetApp piece, with those two, it really reduces the amount of storage. In fact, if your gold image is 20 gigs that you're actually cloning, these 0-byte files that grow usually never get above 1 to 2 gigabytes, and then they disappear once that session is turned off.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want this to become too techy, guys.
Okay, sorry.
Absolutely.
All right, so I have a question.
So I will say one thing, though, real quick. One of the really key features that Oak Hills leverages as a part of that is the ability to, when a student logs off of that desktop, that anything that they've made changes to from an operating system perspective can automatically be reverted right back to the clean state. So if a student, does something malicious to the machine or installs something that they really shouldn't into that machine, when that student logs off, that machine automatically goes back to the state of the master image. And so the next student that goes in to log in and use that desktop has a clean, pristine configuration that Oak Hills has mandated.
Okay, we have a bunch of questions coming up, but first, before I do that, Todd, can you talk? Matthew, can you talk a little bit about how you got involved with Oak Hills School District and how you worked with Champion in that area?
So yeah, I'd be happy to. So my background is I'm a post-sales resource as it relates to VMware, and my role is to be able to provide value out to constituents in Ohio, specifically around state and local government and education. And so Champion reached out from an opportunity standpoint to say, we have a school district that's really looking to be innovative in the way that they can provide services to students and be able to more effectively manage the environments that they need to work off of. So went out and went with Champion on some initial meetings to understand the requirements that Todd has and his staff, and we're able to work collaboratively together to develop a solution that has the right mix of technology and process behind it to be able to allow Oak Hills to provide these services out to the students. But so it all starts off with a very, very early partnering together to be able to understand customers' requirements.
Okay, going back to Todd, how did you come to the conclusion to do virtual desktop, to do VDI? And one of the questions I have is, can you tell us a little bit about the process that you went through to choose VDI and working with Champion?
Sure, I will. And make sure we come back to the funding question, because I want to add to that a little bit. Well, actually, our process began with a technology planning engagement with parents, students, staff, community stakeholders, and that's where, as a district, we were really encouraged to explore some of the emerging technologies and really the appropriate role and use of personal technology. So we really had the community support kind of pushing us in this direction. And so we were at a point in our 5-year review and replacement cycle for the high school. And so we started the conversation and looking at how we might use what was budgeted for that 5-year replacement cycle to really move us towards this whole concept of anywhere, anytime learning and allowing students to bring in their own devices. And so with that direction set by our stakeholders, we started to investigate how we could do it, looking at efficiencies and different options of what they may cost us, et cetera. And that investigation really led us to this idea of virtual desktops. And so our tech team invited in Bill Ginn from Champion to share with us what was happening in the area of virtualization and what that might mean for the school district. And Bill brought in Matt from VMware, as he indicated, and we had several meetings. And as Champion and VMware shared their products, we came to the conclusion that option would allow us to accomplish many of the goals that we had and allow us to purchase the thin client devices for student use.
Okay, there's a lot of questions here about security that are coming up. So, but before I do that, I don't want to lose sight of the question you asked about funding. So why don't you go ahead and elaborate on that, and then I'll pick out, there must be 4 or 5 questions on security. I'll pick one out and we can go from there. But if you could talk a little bit about funding, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you have some folks on here that can talk about the technical side of things, because I could not do that for you. And I know people's questions probably lie either in the technical side of things or perhaps maybe in the funding. But like most school districts across the country, we're struggling with financial stability and trying to maximize the benefit of every educational dollar that we have, and we're really trying to change what I'll call the fundamental thinking that implementation of technology is going to cost you more money. I think everybody defaults to the idea that technology is going to cost you more money, but in reality, if it's done right and if it's done with intention, you can save your school district money. And not only save money, but offer a wider variety of educational experiences. You can reach a broader student audience, and I think that you'll see results in higher levels of student achievement towards career and college readiness, which is kind of the focus for all of us now. But just like for anyone tuned in, the same thing is true in Oak Hills. It only works if it's cost neutral or saves you money.
Okay, great point. This is from L. Denzer. It says, please elaborate on security implementation regarding VDI, specifically student data and personal identification information. So I'm going to do this 2 ways, because I think there's one is, what is the compliance standpoint? And Todd, I'll direct that to you second. But let's go for first, not too technical, Kevin and Matthew, but talk to us a little bit about security around VDI. Kevin, why don't you start?
I'll start, and then I'll let Matthew jump in. There's some things that you have to do with virtual desktops that makes it work much better. And one of it is content redirection. What I mean by that is not writing anything to the image that the student's using. So if they want to save documents to their My Document folder, that is absolutely not residing on the image itself. In fact, when you click on that, you're actually bringing up a network share somewhere that has their home directory and a quota, an amount of space that they have available to them to be able to save those documents. Now, when it comes from a personal ID, these things are all through Active Directory. In fact, the connection broker or the piece of software that actually connects the user to the appropriate image, basically cloned image, basically goes to AD. AD tells them what that user is, which groups they're in, what permissions they have, what's their home directory settings, gets all that information from a centralized location that you're already using, and then applies them to the image as they're being used. Now, Matthew, do you have anything to add to that besides?
So not much other than as it relates to Oak Hills specifically, every student has their own unique identity, unique username and password on the network. So when a student goes to request a desktop, they use their own username and password to be able to get access to their desktop, and there is no real sharing of data, no common, so their home directories that you were referring to is unique to their own ID.
Right. Now, are they using roaming profiles, mandatory profiles, local profiles? I wasn't there to set it up, Matthew, so I wasn't, because it's one of the questions that someone asked about was, what type of profiles. I'm not sure which ones you guys use there.
Yeah, so Oak Hill specifically uses like a folder redirect. Most of the components, such as the My Documents and some favorites and things like that, just really get redirected out to a network share. There are other options, but that, especially in education, that seems to be the most common one, so that, we guarantee that oftentimes students have a home directory or like a mapped network drive that they can actually save their documents out to. And then sometimes there are public share folders that are out there that they can collaborate with documents with other students on. So a lot of that stuff's already saved out to the network share already, but just as a fail-safe, we went ahead and redirected the My Documents out there just to guarantee that, if a student tries to save something and inadvertently saves it to where they think it's on the local computer, it's actually not.
Okay, and Todd, just from your perspective, I know security had to be an issue with your staff and other folks within the community. How did you handle that? What are your thoughts about security on this?
Well, I think it really came down to a trust level with VMware and Champion in the installation of the program and walking us through how it works, et cetera. We did obviously have the same types of questions. To this point, security has not been an issue. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that we at some point in time may have some type of security breach, but that's the case with any program or system that's in place. But we were very satisfied with the security level of the VDI.
So one of the questions that came in is how did our staff work with your staff? And Debbie, I'd like you to take it from, this is Debbie Brenner, who is the VP of PS, and she is the person who, her team worked with Todd's team. So if you could just, what is the process? How did his team and our team work together to get them where they wanted to go?
Well, Chris, a little bit on my background for those that are on the phone. I'm the Vice President of Professional Services now, but I'm also a former CIO, so I bring that business experience and business background as well, and all the concerns that everyone's voicing I'm well aware of, as well as being a certified information auditor and security manager. So we heavily have to look into security, and we really need to understand, and what we work to strive for is understanding the environment and what the overall objective is, and how we do that, and the process and methodology we've put in place is there are clients that are at different cycles in their virtual desktop process, and for those clients that haven't really been familiarized with it or implemented it yet in their system, we offer what we call a proof of technology, where we'll come in, we will install one server with 5 endpoints, and allow the teams to be able to play with it, get familiar with it, test the applications that are currently in place, see what's working, let them become familiar with it. The second thing that we offer after that, and some clients are actually skipping that proof of technology and know they want virtual desktop in their environment and going right to our advisory service, which is the second piece. And that will basically come in and we run an assessment in your environment, as well as questionnaires, questioning the team, learning more about the infrastructure. At the end of that assessment, you get a very comprehensive report, pretty large-sized report, but it really shows you everything going on in your environment, what applications are being used by what person, in what areas, what are high-level applications. It helps us determine how we're going to size for storage, what applications may not be candidates to be virtualized, which is sometimes the case. We then, based on that, advisory services will put together the findings and the recommendations on how we feel you should go forward and pilot in the different user areas of the client's environment to see which users, pick users across different departments and start piloting it and making sure you're rolling it out in a phased approach, giving everybody the ability to learn. The whole objective is to increase the level of productivity and reduce costs. So once the user test case plans and everything has been signed off on, you've piloted it, then we move forward with the production implementation. And we worked closely with Oak Hills throughout the entire process from beginning to end even to the point where we were assisting them after the fact and assisting their team with, managed support when they were having questions or issues, and, just transitioning learning, helping their team learn more. They were working right along side by side with us. So that's a real high level of our methodology. Is there anything else, David, you'd like me to talk about?
No, that's a great start. Todd, from your standpoint, one of the questions is it working? So, how are things working? How is VDI working in your school district?
VDI is, to this point, working as we expected it to and as we planned for it. And I think a lot of that relates directly back to the work that we did initially with Champion, because, as I look back on the initial stages of this partnership, I do think that the people involved from Champion and VMware really listened to our needs, and they tried to find the best fit for us. And I think that the willingness to listen to our needs as a public high school and then design something for Oak Hills really gave us a sense of confidence and in what we were doing. I guess what I'm trying to say is they didn't try to fit us into some preconceived business mold. They listened to our needs as a high school, as a school district, and really built the system based on that. And to this point, it's working well and is meeting all of our needs.
That's great. And I think, if I could, and part of this is just one size does not fit all. You can't do this like a Happy Meal, right? This has got to be specific to the needs of the specific school district. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely.
Okay. We have another question. This is from Katie. Must students use VPN to gain access from home? I
know that Todd mentioned a portal, so I'm assuming that they go through some type of web portal to gain access. I don't know if there's a VPN connection that gets connected after they log in. You'd have to ask Matt and Todd about that.
Okay, well, either Todd or Matt, either of you have an answer to that question.
So this is Matt. The answer is no. They don't need a VPN to connect in remotely. It does use an SSL traffic tunnel to go through, so it goes through a secure socket through a firewall, but it does not require a VPN.
Okay, Matthew, can you take a step back out of Oak Hills and just talk about, in a more global sense, in school districts, and I also have a question about higher ed that came in. How does higher ed, how does that benefit higher education as well as school districts like Oak Hills?
Okay, so that's a really good question, actually, because a lot of the bring your own IT, the bring your own computer methodology has been something that's been around in higher ed actually for a little while now. A lot of college students have their own laptops or desktops in the dorms and things like that. And the real challenge has been, the same thing that Oak Hills has gone through is how do we provide access to the applications that the students need and not have to worry about them going to a specific college or to a specific room that has the computers that has that application that they happen to need to use for a paper. So, as it relates to what we're seeing from a trending standpoint, especially in like the virtual lab space, and it's converting your physical desktop labs that are on the campus or in the schools and converting them over to a virtual lab. And so when a student logs in, it goes back to that Active Directory or network authentication. Oftentimes we see those that network authentication integrated with student enrollment systems. So when the student enrolls into a class, they are automatically placed into a security group that has access to a virtual desktop with the applications that they require for that class. So we start to see where literally all of the labs in a particular college might be more neutralized or turned into a virtual lab, and so a student from the physics college can come over to the psychology college and be able to log into a lab there and still get access to the physics applications if needed. So, and it's really, again, going back to focusing on user-centric and providing access to what the users really need and not having to worry about what device they're coming in from and things like that.
Okay, we have two questions that came in. I'm going to start with this one. And I think this is for Todd, and if anybody can help a little bit, that's great. What challenges did they encounter? I'm assuming they meant Oak Hills. Encounter in implementing VDI. What were some of the challenges that your teams had in this process, Todd?
Well, certainly there is a challenge in just the whole change process. Anytime you implement change, I think that there's some challenges associated with that, either from resistance or maybe just not a full understanding of what we were trying to do. We certainly had the challenge of providing some training for our folks, not only in the use of the virtual desktops, but also the idea that students now were going to be carrying their own devices or using devices that we provided for them, and what does that mean for instruction and learning, and a little bit different way of doing things. We have had a few technical glitches here and there that have been very quickly resolved, either through our own tech team or through Champion and VMware. They've been very sensitive to our needs when maybe something hasn't worked from a technology standpoint, and sometimes they were very minor pieces. Those probably have been our greatest challenges to this point. That, and I guess trying to keep up with the numerous emails and telephone calls and inquiries that we get about the program.
Did you have a lot, this is my question actually, did you have a lot of cultural pushback, either from your staff or from the faculty or from the student body or parents as you did this?
Fortunately, no. As I mentioned before, our first steps really were engagements on 21st century learning and where the community would like to see us go, and we really were pushed on allowing students to bring their own technology to school and use it in the instructional program, use it as part of their learning. And so we took that to heart. That actually surprised us. We thought we would get resistance, but in reality we did not. And so I would encourage anybody, if you don't know, if you're assuming that your stakeholders and community would resist that effort, then I encourage you to engage them, because you may be surprised.
And one of the things I wanted to mention with this question about what the challenge is, I will tell you with doing a lot of these VDI implementations, one of the things we're finding, and it's not at Oak Hills so much, but it's at other ones, is they've had a lot of experience in server consolidation, and they think that VDI is just the same thing, and it couldn't be further from the truth. There are issues that you have when you're doing desktops that you've never seen at servers. So, for instance, if you've done server virtualization, the chances of you rebooting all of your servers all at the same time every day of the week is just not going to happen. That's a different way of running, especially when you're talking about your storage and how it's actually configured and assigned. So there are certain challenges in VDI that if you haven't done it before, if you don't have the experience and you just say, oh, we've been doing VMware for 5 years, our guys will figure it out, and they will figure it out, but it's how long it will take them to figure it out. And that's, if I can say anything, that's where the expertise comes in of doing more than just one of these in your lifetime. Doing 3 or 4 a week actually helps our customers be able to deploy much quicker and get, in Todd's case, we had to do this over the summer. Am I right, Todd? We had to start right when school ended and have everything up and running first day of school.
That's correct.
So not a lot of people could actually get that done in that shorter period of time if they haven't had the experience to get it done before.
Okay.
So, Matt, this is Matt real quick. And one thing as it relates specifically to Oak Hills that I was really impressed with that I don't see as often in other schools is the involvement of getting the teachers involved in what the applications are that they are going to expect to need to use in the classrooms and what they need to be able to provide. So like a science teacher was able to provide access to some scientific probes that leverage USB probes. And so we were able to get that feedback early in the process, so we were able to include that in the testing and make sure that those kinds of things are what we're going to be able to successfully enable in this virtual desktop. And so that, having that early involvement from the teachers and from those who are actually going to use the environment was one of the real key things that I saw from my perspective that really enabled success for Oak Hills.
Yeah, I'd like to open this up in a minute or two to just verbal questions to come in. So, Mark, just to let you know, I'll cue you when we're ready for that. But I have one question is, from a couple people, go back to you, Todd, how do you start? I mean, I guess that's, a couple people want to, how did you get started?
My advice would be to establish some type of community engagement process to bring people to the table, teachers, other staff members, students, parents, other prominent stakeholders from the district, and bring them together regarding a discussion about 21st century learning and what will school look like in the next decade. We really are adhering to the belief that the pace of change in technology that we're all experiencing right now is going to provide more changes in instruction and how learning takes place during the next decade than what we've seen in the last 200 years, and we want to embrace that and we want to use it to better prepare our students. And if you can get the community on the same page as that, then you're going to get the support that you need to move forward.
And it's a great point. And what I'd like to be able to do is I'd like each of our four panelists and take a minute to think about this and sort of give a little summation. We'll start with Debbie, and then we'll go to Matt, and then we'll go to Kevin, and then we'll go back to Todd. But before we do that, I do want to open up, see if there are any verbal questions that people ask. So, Mark, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, so Mark, if you could tell people what they need to do and see if there's any people that we got a lot of obviously text questions, but we'll see if there are any verbal questions for any of the panel members today.
And certainly, if you wish to ask a question over the phone, please press star and 1. That is star and 1. And you may remove yourself from the queue by pressing the pound key.
Okay, so do we have any questions from the group?
Not yet.
Not yet. We can give it a little bit, or if somebody wants to go ahead with some remarks while we wait, and we can check back in a moment.
Okay, so Debbie, I'll let you start.
I guess the biggest thing I would say from a perspective is it can be quite daunting and overwhelming thinking about everything, the new technology, staying on top of it, and that's what Champion is here to assist you with. We've got the technical expertise and the teams that have done the work. And while we have a framework that we use, I'll coin a word that our CEO says, we offer flexibility within that framework. So we know the methodologies, we know what works, but we also know we have to be flexible to accommodate clients in different situations. So that's sort of it for me.
Yeah, that's great. Matthew, how about you from your perspective, if you'd like to sum up for our group today?
So, the technology for schools is constantly changing at an ever-increasing pace, and so, virtual desktops is one option that schools have, is the ability to be able to rapidly adapt to and accommodate those changes. And if it's something that you looked at in the past, as the technology has progressed, the amount of use cases and the ease of use for the environment has become increasingly better as well. And I encourage you to really take a look at it, as it really can make a big impact in how you view managing your desktops today.
Okay. Kevin?
Yeah, if I could say anything, I would tell you that you have to look at VDI as just a piece of the big enterprise desktop strategy. You are not going to virtualize 100% of your desktops in the next few years. So you have to look at your desktop strategy, which will include different technologies, whether it be VDI, whether it be virtualizing applications, whether you take advantage of less expensive options like RDS or things like that. You have to look at the big picture and not just focus in on one area. VDI is being a big area, but it's just one piece of the puzzle, and the strategy that you go forward with has to be flexible enough to be able to support all of those different technologies.
Okay? And Todd, from your perspective, how would you sum all this up?
Well, I think I started the presentation by saying that I'm confident that this discussion is taking place in most school districts across the country about how to meet the technology needs of our students and our teachers and communities, et cetera. And, you know, if you're a district that is struggling with technology purchases right now, not necessarily from a funding standpoint, but from a what to buy standpoint, and that's a difficult position to be in because, you know, the pace of change is so rapid that by the time you sign a purchase order, sometimes, you know, there's something else that's better out there and then sometimes even less expensive. So certainly I would encourage you to explore the virtual environment, the VDI, et cetera. We did a little bit of a cost analysis, and I'm not going to tell you this to the penny, but it's within a couple $100,000. We've done an analysis here that compared to purchasing computers for all of our students, we've saved about $1.2 million in hardware, IT support, and infrastructure.
Big number. I think that's a sizable percentage of what you were going to spend as a school district on technology.
Correct.
Okay. All right, folks, first of all, I want to thank all the panelists. I'd like to thank all the participants who listened in on this call. Special thanks, Matthew from VMware and Debbie Brenner and Kevin from Champion, but most of all, Todd, you know, taking out your time to share the experience of Oak Hill school districts with so many other people around the country today. Really, really appreciate that, and thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Folks, if you have, are there any other questions?
Mark?
We have no questions in queue.
Okay, so if, again, if you have any questions, please contact us. We'd be glad to work with you. And if you have other specific or personal questions for Todd, send them through us, and we'll forward those on to Todd for you. So I hope all of you have a great afternoon and a great holiday coming up this weekend. Thank you very much, everybody.